Perfect.
Vedika, thank you for spending some time with me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So open us up. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what you write about.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Vedika and I'm currently a student. And I've always felt like a bit of an underdog. So I actually spent the last 2 years trying to find founders who felt relatable to me. So I tried to learn a little bit about their stories. A lot of them had very rocky paths through success, and I found that really fascinating. Eventually, as I was kind of collecting these stories, I realized that I wanted to share them with the world. And I began compiling them in a book called Think Outside the Odds. And so I'm just really excited to talk about it a little bit and my process of writing it. And it will be coming out in this September.
Well, congratulations on your upcoming launch. I'm sure it'll go super, super well. Before we dive into your writing process, you mentioned, looking at different founders. What industry do you work in or want to work in?
Yeah, so I'm not positive exactly what I want to work in yet. And I think that that's one of the most exciting things about writing this book is learning how a lot of these entrepreneurs have had very like non-linear paths. And so that's just made me a lot more comfortable with the ambiguity of not knowing exactly where I want to go yet.
Absolutely. I mean, as an entrepreneur myself, I can confirm that my path has been a roller coaster of loop-de-loops. So I'm sure that there are lots of other stories like that. Now, thinking about your writing journey, obviously, this is your first book. So, what was that like for you? Were there any struggles that came up that maybe you weren't expecting on that process?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up always loving writing. And so I thought that kind of going into this book writing process, I thought that it would come just as naturally. But I found that writing 50,000 words is a lot harder than just writing 2,000. And so there were a lot of hurdles in that process. And I learned a lot about myself, how I work best, the creative process. So it definitely pushed me outside of my comfort zone. But I think I've come out a lot stronger because of it.
Definitely. You mentioned that creative process. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I think for me, a lot of my creative process and what I'm able to output into the world is very much dependent on my inputs. And so a lot of my creative process is very dependent on talking to other people, engaging with different content online. And so, especially early on in the journey, as I mentioned, I was just talking to founders, learning about them. And so that obviously taught me a lot about their journeys, but it also was just very inspiring and it got me wanting to create. So my creative process when I start is just getting these inputs, getting sources of inspiration. And then I like to go to different coffee shops, sit there for 8 hours and not talk to anyone, and then just output as much as I can. And so it's very much refueling with talking to people and then outputting as much as I can.
It's awesome. I know in my book as well, I did a lot of interviews with various experts in the fields that I was writing about. And when I got those interviews and those recordings, it was like, oh my gosh, there's so much information here. How did you start to put that into a format that not only made sense for you to write, but also made sense for people to read?
Yeah, so I think that the first time you get a little bit excited and it's very hard to kind of output something that makes sense. So when I got the recordings, usually right when I had the interview, I was super excited and I just wanted to write something. So I would just take a piece of paper and write anything that came to mind, anything and everything. And then I would just take a week off from it, give myself a break, let the excitement wear off, come back to my notes, and then think about what is standing out to me, what is really exciting, what even a week later is getting my heart racing. And then those are the things that I would kind of take and transcribe into different chapters.
I love that. Are you the type of person that needs to have that passion and fire and enthusiasm to write, or can you kind of make yourself write quality content even if you're not feeling that gung ho that day?
I think that for me, when I write my best, it's when I have that fire. But I think that one of the things that's allowed me to write so many words is writing even when I'm not feeling that fire and being okay with the fact that it won't be as good. And as soon as I accept that and I accept that the writing might not come out as good, it's a very liberating feeling. And so even when I'm not feeling super exciting, it's easier to get words out onto the paper. And so I think when you're tackling, and I'm sure you know this, when you're tackling this project that feels so intimidating, I think just keep going is really, really important.
Absolutely. I was going to pull out a Finding Nemo reference there because that is my favorite movie and I am an adult and I will full admit that. But
Mhm.
I'm thinking about your editing process. Did you do that yourself? Did you outsource to an editor? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I worked with several editors throughout the process, and then I also worked with various beta readers. I found that we are good judges of our work, but we're not the best. And so always having outside perspectives, whether or not you're able to afford an editor, you'll always be able to find a friend who would be willing to just look through your work for you, and just give it that second pair of eyes. So I worked with beta readers. A lot of them were just in my network. And then I also worked with different editors.
Awesome. Did you have any fear of criticism when you started to put your work out and show other people it?
I think that I was definitely a little bit self-conscious about it, especially when you're young. I think that you want to put something out into the world that's really good, but at the same time, it's a little bit intimidating. But at the same time, I know that criticism is what makes you better, and it's really that's so formative to your work. Just having feedback and criticism. So I learned to actually push for it because I noticed that a lot of times the people closest to you don't want to criticize you, and so I would just ask them and push them and try to just get as much criticism as I could out of them. And I learned that that's where I grew the most.
Hmm. And I feel like there's a difference as well between someone critiquing you as a human and as a person versus them critiquing your work, because the random person on the internet that has all the feelings about your book, they have something, going on within themselves. But the people that are working with you to get your book better, they want it to be good. They want to give you those critiques so that it can be better and impact more people. So I think that's an important distinction for people to remember.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like if they thought that the book didn't have potential, they wouldn't even put the effort to critique it or to give you feedback. So it's already like such a big vote of confidence when they go ahead and give you feedback.
That's so true. I'm so glad you brought that up. So most of the people that are going to be watching this video, they are first-time nonfiction authors. So they were in your shoes maybe a couple months ago, right before you wrote your manuscript. What parting advice would you give them that maybe we haven't covered already that can help them get to that final draft stage easier and more quickly?
I would just say anytime that you're about to sit and write, I would set a word count goal for yourself. I know that this is a bit controversial, I know, in the writing community. Some people don't believe in word count goals, but I think that otherwise it's so easy to just get there and feel very stuck. But if you give yourself a word count goal and you tell yourself it's like glue to your chair where you won't get up until you finish writing, you will get something on the paper. And something is always, always better than nothing. Even if you read it over and it seems like it's not that good of a draft, you have something to work with. So you're starting from somewhere. And that's always really important.
Absolutely. I am a content goal or a word count goal person as well. I find if I do a time-based goal, then I can sit and stare at the same paragraph for an hour, and that's not really productive. So glad you shared that information. Vedika, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And again, good luck on your launch. I'm sure it's going to be really successful.
Thank you so much, Jesse. It's been awesome talking to you.